The search for the next head coach heats up.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this bonus edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen or view of the day. Yes, this podcast is also available in video form, so head on over to YouTube and check it out. My name is Dan Holney. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So in this abbreviated edition of Locked On Capitals, I will talk to you about the news that broke from Pierre LeBrun today about the potential that the Caps will be reaching out to Spencer Carbery, or the Caps will be reaching out to the Maple Leafs to seek permission to interview Spencer Carbery. Just a bit of a note, I will have an episode for you a little bit later in the week that goes into greater depth on Spencer Carbery in particular. But in this episode, I'm going to talk about the candidates that the Capitals will be reaching out. But just to get it going here, what this all emanates from was the tweet that was put out by Pierre LeBrun. Per the Athletic's Pierre LeBrun, the Caps have requested to interview current Toronto Maple Leafs assistant Spencer Carbery for the head coaching vacancy. Now the Leafs season is over following their second round exit at the hands of the Florida Panthers. There is still interest in the DMV native, alum, and current Tampa Bay Lightning head coach Jeff Halpern, who's also getting an interview. So this is wise for the Capitals. As we know, the Caps didn't get the result that they were looking for this past season. You know, when I took a look at this last season, I thought to myself, hey, they went out and signed Darcy Kemper. They went out and signed Dylan Strome and Charlie Lindgren and Connor Brown. This team is loaded for bear. As it turns out, a bunch of injuries happened and the Caps did not make it to the playoffs, period. So it is going to be of paramount importance that the Brian McClellan chooses the right head coach the next time. And I'm going to put that in quotes, the right head coach, because of course, when Brian McClellan hired Peter Laviolette, he perceived him to be the right head coach as well. We could argue about the fact that it had to do with the myriad of injuries or COVID that kind of stymied his success, if you will. Ultimately, Peter Laviolette was a really great coach. I just think to a certain extent he was a victim of circumstance, but the more that we're hearing about him now is that he kind of lost the locker room. To a certain extent, you could say Evgeny Kuznetsov had a hard time working under his system. Some people said the same thing goes for Anthony Mantha. So a change at the head coaching position could be just the thing that could help jumpstart this Caps team to make them competitive again at the end of the day. And one of the things that Brian McClellan mentioned in his postseason presser is he said that he is going to search for a head coach that can not only work with the veterans, but also the young players. He said he doesn't know if a coach like that exists, but he's sure going to look. So that is the one thing that I'm going to say is that Mac is really going to have to go out and really just vet all these coaches really well. Let's not just grab the first one, right? But Spencer Carbery is definitely one of the front runners. As we know, Jeff Halpern is another one out there. So there is a lot of options for the Caps out there at the head coaching position. We've also heard Gabby, Bruce Boudreau, kind of going out into the weeds there a little bit. I love Gabby. He's a fun guy to listen to, but ultimately, do I think that he is the right head coach for this Caps team once again? I really don't think that's the case. The race won't just come down to those two assistants, though. LeBrun also wrote that the Caps have already interviewed other candidates for the job and that it is no means a two-person field. So that is an interesting thing for the Capitals. Again, I want them to take all the time that they possibly need to find the right head coach. As we know, we do not want to squander the remainder of the Alex Ovechkin era. Everyone says, well, there's not going to be a tear it down to the studs rebuild. Well, I don't think this team plans on tanking until then. They want to be in the playoffs next season. It is going to be a tall order. So If you take a look at this team, I don't know what Mac has up his sleeves, what kind of moves. If you want to take a look at years ago, he kind of wowed me when he signed Niskanen and Orpik. That was a big deal. Didn't see that coming. I saw that when he signed Darcy Kemper, that was something that was way out there. All the NHL people said there's no way that Darcy Kemper is going to sign with the Capitals. As it turns out, he did do that. So I know that Brian McClellan has good judgment, but he is going to have to really, reach in and really just try to sign some big name players out there. As we know, this team, to a certain extent was a long way away from being competitive. And if you were to put that exact same team out on the ice next season, a wild card team at best. That's with Wilson, Backstrom, and Carlson all in there. A wild card team at best. And that's one of the things that I've spoke about on this podcast for the longest time, is that this team is a ways away from being competitive, and a good place to start is at the head coaching position. So doing your due diligence and finding the right head coach. All right. So after the break here, we are going to talk about what are the Caps ultimately looking for in a head coach, and what are some of the other candidates available out there. We'll talk about that when Locked On Capitals continues. Buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped over the fun that you'll have. One of the stressful things is, you find out an event is coming to your town and you can't find tickets. That is why you need Game Time. That is the perfect place to find tickets for those hard to find ticket locations. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Today's episode is brought to you by a product I use literally every day, AG1 by Athletic Greens. Maybe you're like me, you want to eat healthy and eat well, but it's always easier said than done. That's no longer the case with AG1. With one delicious scoop of AG1 in a glass of water each day, you're absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced superfoods. So right now it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with a convenient daily nutrition. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/NHL network. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/NHL network to take ownership over your health and pick up on the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. All right, welcome back into this bonus edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So one of the things about doing this show in the summertime is that when your team's out of the playoffs, you can kind of work ahead a little bit, do some player previews, that kind of thing. That's what I've done. And then things like this happen and you kind of have to drop what you're doing. And that's what I'm doing for you guys right now, is to let you know that it looks like that the Caps have reached out to the Maple Leafs and Spencer Carbery to try to get an interview with him. So I think that is the right direction for this team to go in. And, the thing that I like about Spencer Carbery the most is, and what we're going to talk about in this last part of this bonus episode, is he has a good ability of working with the younger players. As you know, coaching down in Hershey, you're working with a lot of younger players. So this will be the first coach in DC in quite some time that I can remember that it'll be a head coach that will be able to work with veterans and younger players. Because if you took a look back on Barry Trotz, that was kind of the book on him as well. His reluctance to want to work with younger players. Now, there is two sides to every coin, and a lot of this has gotten back to Peter Laviolette, and he's like, "Listen, I have no reluctance with working with younger players. Maybe you didn't see what my roster was in Nashville, and if you take a look at it, there was quite a few young players on his roster." So, touche, Peter Laviolette. He said it had more to do with the players that were available to him in Washington. They just weren't living up to potential. And why are you going to put a younger player in there just to put a younger player in there? So, to say that Peter Laviolette is solely to blame for the Caps' lack of success is short-sighted. I don't even think he was, a majority of the issue. I mean, let's face it. The biggest issue was the injuries to this team. That is number one, above all and all. You take a look at Wilson out. You take a look at Backstrom out and Carlson and Oshie and Orloff. I mean, pretty much the lion's share of this team missed a substantial amount of time. So that is the biggest thing. And then factoring in there is the coaching. I wasn't in the locker room with him, of course, but there was rumblings out there, like I talked about off the top there, that he lost the locker room to the end. And if you watch the videos in breakdown day, people kind of, they kind of were walking on eggshells. They didn't say anything too, disparaging about him, but they didn't speak too glowingly of him either. I will say, though, talking about what Peter Laviolette did, was Dylan Strome a better player under Peter Laviolette? You better believe he was. So I don't want to paint Lavi as just a really poor coach. I don't think that's the case. But the mission for the team right now, I'm talking about Brian McClellan and, I suppose, Ted Leonsis might have his input in there a little bit as well, is to find the right head coach. And like I talked about, the biggest thing for me is to find that coach that can work with the young and the veteran players, because I think this is going to be a team in transition. I know it is. And I don't know what Brian McClellan has up his sleeve as far as, if, is he going to aim for the fences and just pick up this big fish? I mean, I don't know who that's going to be. I think we're going to have to wait until the Stanley Cup is over, for one, and then we'll have to wait for free agency. And then I think, the dominoes will start to fall. And I think that you'll start to see some big movement. But the biggest thing right now for the Capitals is that head coaching thing. That is the thing that you need to take care of first. And it's the right direction to go in. Spencer Carbery, good option. Jeff Halpern, a good option as well. And then you start to go into the weeds a little bit as well. Gerard Gallant. Some people have asked me about him, what my thoughts are on him. I mean, I think I would like to see what the other options are. I'm not totally sold on Gerard Gallant. I like what he's done in different locations that he's played in. And, it's just the New York hockey scene is a pressure cooker, I think somewhat similar to Toronto, where there is zero tolerance for failure. And the New York Rangers did not win a Stanley Cup. So what does that mean? Get the head coach, get him out of here. So I don't know if that's the right move. I do think that Gerard Gallant will land on his feet, but kind of a tough thing for him, but I do think there are a lot of great options. And I don't think as Caps fans, we're even really aware of who all the options are out there. We're just hearing, kind of the marquee names out there or players that have ties to the DC area. So it is an exciting thing, that is for sure. McClellan has plenty of time and is likely not in any rush. The decision will be one made thoroughly with the team trying to get younger and faster while still relying on a veteran core. He also said the team isn't necessarily focused on experience, writes the Hockey News. So that is the big thing this time. They don't need to go out for a Barry Trotz. They don't need to go out for Peter Laviolette. They can go into the weeds a little bit and potentially, a first-time head coach like a Spencer Carbery or a Jeff Halpern. I like both of those options. I think that is... I don't think you can really lose with Halpern or Spencer Carbery. I think the Caps are in a good position, and if it came down to one or two of those, I don't think they could really go wrong with either one. So just getting you guys updated on what is going on with the Capitals in their search for the next head coach. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The next episode that is going to be coming out a little bit later tonight is the one where I'm talking about Hunter Shepard, and would he be a good option for the Capitals for their next backup goalie, given that Charlie Lindgren, he's an asset at the end of the day, and he played pretty well, but he could have played better. Would he be a good trade chip? It'll be a great episode that you guys will want to watch. So that is coming out a bit later tonight or tomorrow morning, I guess I say. So once again, thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, where it is your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.